Hi, welcome to Inside the Moms Club, where being a mom is the coolest place to be. Here in the Moms Club, we believe that what embarrasses you now will make a great story later. And let's face it, if you don't laugh sometimes, you're going to cry. Join us in having a good laugh together. I'm Monica Samuels. You are now inside the Moms Club, your private destination for all things mom. Welcome, moms. Welcome to Inside the Moms Club. I'm your host, Monica Samuels, and I'm here with my co-host, Julie Orchid.
I'm so excited about today because I happen to personally know the lady that we are going to be interviewing today, so that's exciting to me.
It is very exciting, and it's very consistent with the whole reason that we started this show.
True.
So we began this show as a group of 5 moms who were friends. We met through our kids.
Yeah.
They weren't children, really. School.
That's right.
And they were all graduating in 2020 during the pandemic.
Little did I know how much I was going to need you.
Well, yeah, we definitely needed each other. And actually, we were friends before. But then the day that they announced that school was canceled because of this pandemic, we decided to have a margarita party at my pool, not realizing that that's not really...
I mean, in all fairness, we didn't really know. So when in doubt, I say have a margarita.
So yeah, we did.
So we did that.
Started there, but then we formed a group text and we supported each other. And it was, and their kids had no prom.
Yeah.
Their graduation was a parade of cars decorated.
Yeah, it was a sad state of affairs.
It was very sad because my son, we didn't decorate the car and he was late. And so he was next to the last person. And by then, all the teachers were kind of like, yeah, bye, Chase.
Congrats.
Good luck.
Yeah.
It was just sad. It was sad for the kids.
It was. But, we went through a lot of things in the past 4 years,
And we've been through a lot together, each one of us. So in the last year, one of us has lost both her in-laws, and that was a struggle for her.
Right.
You've gone through your divorce, and
right.
you just lost your aunt recently, which
True
is
story.
very sad. I did something to my hips. No one knows. Age thing, I guess. I couldn't walk. It was bad. And Julie, I invited her to come visit me in Florida, and she didn't realize she was my nurse.
I could be your nurse.
Yeah. Has anyone ever seen the Tim Conway character on the Carol Burnett show where he's shuffles
along?
That's the only way I could walk. I couldn't walk a stair. I couldn't do anything. But Julie got me through
if you know me, I'm willing to drive you to the airport and be your nurse. That's my 2 strengths.
Exactly. And then we had another friend who was in and out of the hospital and has sadly,
it's very serious.
Near
a couple times we were not sure that she was going to make it, but she has, and she has rallied. But
and then we have our friend Jennifer, who nothing bad ever happens to.
It's not true.
And she has a great life. But she did tell us not to sugarcoat it. She's been very busy her whole life.
Yeah.
So that's stressful.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, but we actually found a day to all be together. There's 5 of us. We went to the spa. May 1st turned out to be a day where we all hit it, and we were in one place at one time.
Exactly. And thanks to Leslie, our cruise director, because Leslie said, I have a gift card to Lake Austin Spa, which is really amazing.
A really nice spa.
And if you want to come,
Well, that's not really how it went down. It's like this. Hi, guys. I'm going to like to know if you'd like to go to the spa. She gives you about 20 seconds to answer. So you got to move it. So she's like, May 1st is the date. If you can make it, great. If you can't, sayonara. That's how that went.
And I was lucky because I already had a gift card for a half-day spa that I'd gotten for Mother's Day in 2017, and it was good for 100 years.
Oh, Monica, 100 years?
100 years. So I took advantage, and I told my husband, don't worry, I know that place is expensive, but I've got that gift card you gave me, so I'm going to use that.
Well, Monica, I know you, and I don't know how you managed to go on a gift card and still spend $500.
Okay, well, let me explain. And listen up, ladies out there. Okay, so if you haven't had a facial before at a spa, here's how it works. They put you on the table, and your anesthetician puts all sorts of things, masks and creams and everything, and tells you...
Well, they tell you how terrible your skin is.
Well, there's that. But then they tell you in a week... you're going to look amazing. Now, you may look like red and puffy and look awful for today, but in a week, you're going to look terrific. And then before you get off the table, she's standing over you with a sheet and a pen, and she's checking off every item that she used.
She is actually grading your skincare.
Well, there's that too.
Yeah, there's...
And then when you're leaving, she's going to take you to your next appointment. She takes you with this form through the store, and she shows you everything she used on your skin that's going to make you look amazing. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be smart about this. I'm not going to buy every single thing on that sheet, which I've done before. Instead, I picked 3 things. And when I checked out, it was $571.
I was going to say, what is that? 2.5 things out of the out of the list that she checked. Yeah.
So now I have to explain to my husband how that free spa day turned into $571.
Well, we did that, but we also went into the locker room, and we, if you've been to any spas, you can, go into the hot tub, and it's a spa. So we had already had a couple Bloody Marys, and basically it turned into
it was a mom's play date.
It was a little bit of think of your wildest play dates. And so a lot of people, we weren't really at spa behavior, but we were loud, and someone in the group forgot their bathing suit.
Yeah.
So anyway, listen, I'm a skins up kind of girl, but in honor of Monica and respecting her, I did not do that. I didn't. I wore my bra and underwear.
Well, and at first we thought it was a bathing suit, because I don't know where you've been shopping, but yeah, it was quite something.
Well,
it was quite, yes, it was. But we were loud, and we got some looks. For those ladies that came there thinking we're going to be all zen and go to the spa and it's going to be relaxing. We were there, and that was not fun. I don't think they probably
served alcohol, so it got a little rowdy. But the point is, I think, is that we have a group of friends, and you support each other. And I think friends are good for all of humanity. But for women, we really love to connect. We really love to bond, and have those really good connections. And today we do have a guest who has a bond with a special group of ladies that I have found their podcast to be super touching. It's raw. It's honest. I think it's all advice a lot of people need to know. And they have a tagline, and it always draws me in every time because one of the taglines that they have today or on their podcast is, "You found us. I'm so glad you did, but I'm sorry that you had to." And so with that...
And we are very fortunate. Yes, we have one of the ladies here with us today. She is a Mississippi native with a Hollywood past who has found resilience living in Austin, Texas. After the passing of her husband, Oliver, she lives by the motto, "Our journey of new beginnings will always honor and rejoice the past." Her voice and advice can be heard on their podcast, Every Widow Thing, where she shares her journey of grief with her 3 co-hosts. Please welcome Lacey Schmelzle. Please welcome to the Moms Club. Welcome, Lacey.
Hi.
Well, we are so honored to have you here today. And I've listened to many episodes of your podcast, and I recommend that to everybody. I think it's helpful to those of us who, for one thing, you never know in your life when something's going to happen that's tragic and it's difficult. And if it doesn't happen to you, like our friend Jennifer, then you have to know how to respond to people, where you have suffered a tragedy like that. So let's start with your story, because there's 4 of you. And you, as I mentioned, you started out in Hollywood. You worked with Billy Crystal and Norman Lear, so you had an interesting career here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
And you ended up, through a series of events, I'm sure, in an elevator in Austin, Texas, with a handsome German fellow named Oliver. And can you continue the story from there and tell us about your journey?
Well, I moved to Austin, Texas. Richard Linklater, who actually did a movie for Castle Rock Entertainment where I was working, and he told me about Austin, Texas. And so I thought that sounded like a cool place to live. And I'd been in LA for about 10 years and I wanted to change. So fast forward, I worked for a tech company. I was single, so I needed a paycheck. So I took a job at a tech company, and I didn't know anything about technology. So my late husband, Oliver, was a tech guy, and he always said, I have no idea how you got in here, but I'm so glad you did. I got on the elevator one day, and all I did, literally, he had me at hello because he just said hello. And I thought, who is this good-looking guy? He was wearing a black trench coat, and he had on his square-toed black shoes. He clearly did not look Texan. So I was immediately attracted to him. But fast forward that night, he came up to me after I'd given a presentation to the Western region, and he said his name again. And that was it. And we started dating, and 8 months later, we got married.
Wow. So that was quick romance, too.
It was, especially for someone who's always been so cautious in romance and my personal life and been so private in my personal life. This just kind of broke me wide open. But when you know, you know.
That's true.
Absolutely.
That's true.
And then you had a son together, Ryder.
Yes.
And
He's 19 now.
Wow.
And he's my tech support. So I don't know if you saw earlier, there was a little issue, and he came in here and he fixed it right up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what sons are for. And
That's
I remind
right.
my son all the time of that.
Well, Lacey, I am an avid listener of your podcast, Every Widow Thing, which is a very clever name. Who came up with the name?
We all did. We had a long list and we all voted. And because that's kind of how we are, we're all equal partners in our LLC as well as our nonprofit. And we all decided on the name, and it was pretty easy, actually.
Yeah. So a tagline that you also have, which I think is super important, and it's on the cover of your podcast. It often says, and I think it packs a punch with very, short phrase. And it says, less deep, less dark, and less often. And I could think that can apply for anything in life, but it really speaks to the stories that you guys tell. And I love how each one of you are brave enough to tell your story, because each one of you have done it. And so it pulls people into your story. But I personally have a couple. I was only in the essence of time, I was only allowed to choose two. But there is one episode that, it cracked me up, and I think everybody should listen to it. I'm going to bring it to light because I think people need to know about it, because a lot of people don't know what to say or what to do when something like this happens to one of your friends. It is episode 16 for our listeners, and it's called People Are Gross. And it cracked me up. I'm sorry, but you guys are funny on this one. And so I feel like I need to point a couple things out that on this one. You actually do what not to do kind of when someone, passes away. Don't write RIP, because that was which means rest in peace, right? So I believe it was Whitney who was it seems, flippant that you would write that. So put more effort into it if you're going to say something. Please do not post someone else's business on any type of social media, correct?
Yes, I wasn't on social media, so that happened to someone else.
That's correct.
Someone sent me a letter that said, chin up, and that's all they said. I'm sorry that your husband died, but chin up, and that's it.
I would probably say chin this.
Sure.
Yeah. Or something. But Monica and I have had this conversation about looky-loos. Would you like to tell us about what that is?
Well, it's weird because there was somebody that came to the funeral, and we try to be gracious and be grace-filled. A lot of this is because you have to laugh at dark things. I don't know about your audience, but I'm guessing they're this way. You have to laugh at the hard things, and sometimes grief is funny in some weird sort of way. But I go to the funeral, and of course, you're still a little out of it. It was sudden death. All four of us had sudden death. So there was no planning. My husband was 38 at the time. And I'm coming out of the church. And of course, at Terrytown United Methodist Church, there's the pumpkin patch because it's October and they sell their little pumpkins. And so that kind of in my mind, I'm like, this is kind of weird and funny all at the same time. And, you're in a daze, and my 6-year-old was holding my hand, and we came outside, and there were people there that I had no idea who they even were. And I was like, this is so odd at the most intimate thing in your life. And there are these they're strangers. And so I thought maybe they're people that Oliver knew that I didn't know. And then I come to find out they weren't. They didn't know either one of us.
So it's kind of a looky-loo. Yeah.
So I started calling them, 'cause you know how when you're driving down the road and you see a car and everybody's like looking to see what happened in the car. It's the same thing. We're Terrytown, that little road, I guess it's Exposition that runs right
exactly.
People were stopping and pulled to the side of the road and just were staring at this funeral going on in a pumpkin patch.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Now that's inappropriate. But when I listened to that episode, I thought, well, should I go to funerals if I didn't know the deceased? Because I know in the South, we go out of respect for the family, you know. So I would hate to think that someone in the family sees me and thinks, well, wow, Monica, or whoever you are, you know, why are you here? So,
well, if you know the family, you do know somebody, right?
Yeah.
These people didn't know us at all. They're pulling over on the side of the road, so they clearly didn't know us.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going on, but it was just kind of comical. Here's a casket going through the pumpkin patch. So I'm sure they thought this has got to be a joke somehow. And, you know, in retrospect, 12 and a half years later, mind you, this has been 12 and a half years for me. I now can go, oh my God, my husband, the German, who was a very, you know, German, would get a kick out of the fact that his casket's going through the middle of a pumpkin patch. It's so ridiculous.
Now your husband was 38 and he passed away from Group A strep, toxic shock.
Yes.
And I have and it was misdiagnosed. There was a misdiagnosis there. One of my best friends from high school, her husband died at 30 of a brain tumor that they diagnosed him as having a sinus infection. And they kept treating this sinus infection. He goes off on a business trip. He tells my friend, this can't be, something's really wrong. I have a terrible headache. Nothing's working. And then he died. It was an inoperable brain tumor. So even if he had known, we often said, well, was it better that he knew or didn't know that this happened? But they left a 9-month-old baby. I'm her single friend and who'd gone to high school with her. And to this day, now that I think back, was I really as supportive and sympathetic as I could and should have been in that situation? Because I think everyone's sort of in shock, you know, and they don't know what to say. So what do you suggest to people, you know, what's the most supportive to a young widow with the friends that really can't relate? Like, rip is not a good, you know, chin up is not helpful.
Well, it just made me laugh because she was like, Whitney was like, I want to rip your head off. Whitney
was pretty upset about it.
Yeah, she was pretty upset about it.
And as Whitney is, Whitney's such a grace-filled, positive person, which is what we love about her. She said that passed quickly because part of, you know, one of the difficult things that you go through in that kind of situation is anger. People don't talk about it enough. People, you know, grief needs to be normalized.
Right.
Grief is not only sadness and tears, it is anger, it is rage at the unfairness of it all. And, you know, for me, it was mostly that, you know, and for the girls too, it's our children. We're worried, like our children were all littles, and we're thinking they don't have their father. How unfair is that? And so that's what we have to live with. And we try to be grace-filled because, believe me, I don't have all the answers either. I know somebody that died recently, and even I struggled with what to say. And I thought, how weird. I've been through this, and I still struggle with what to say because everybody's different. Everybody's journey is going to be different. People are going to act out in different ways. And I think the main thing is to just say, I can sit with you in your grief, whatever that looks like. And maybe offer some suggestions as to what you could do. Like I called this particular person and said, hey, I'm going to the grocery store. I've got a couple-hour window here. Send me an email of all the things you need. I will do it, and I'll put it in a cooler out front. How about that? And she was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And it was as simple as that. And somebody came in and got my kid one time, and it only happened once. But boy, what a relief. That way I could take time for myself to grieve where he's not having to see it all the time. Because, you know, when they're little, they don't need to be in deep grief with you.
And Ryder was 6. Was he not, Lacey?
Yes, he was 6. All of us had all range children. The youngest was 4, which was Kira's youngest. That was in the automobile accident with her and Frank. And then the oldest, I believe, was maybe 14. So not very old.
Yeah. Yeah. These are all kids that, you know, and the great part of your podcast is you guys were smart enough to interview your children, and you get a completely different perspective of an event that happened to them, and that they actually get to say their part, and you learn so much of what they're thinking.
And also, and some, in this instance, some of the children were in the accident in a couple of situations. Yeah. So that's,
so that's also, you, not only are you grieving, but you're a mother trying to care for a child as well.
And meanwhile, Kira was in the accident too. So she had to recover
severely
physically
hurt
as well. And then, of course, Holly's son, Zach, was in the automobile accident. And that, Zach went through a lot, too. And he's so brave. And I'm just so proud of all of our kids.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When I heard that story, I was a baseball mom. So I had traveled up and down that road so many times. So I knew, you can certainly, it really strikes you a lot.
I have to tell some funny stories about Lacey. So Lacey, here we go. So Lacey is a very funny person, and I met her through a mutual friend, and I was basically stalking her to be my friend, and I still am to this day. But
that's what she does with all her friends.
I know, I do it with all my friends,
we are,
ladies?
We are.
Yeah. So the thing about this is that, Lacey, I have never laughed harder when someone comes to your house, you have had this tragic event, you're just trying to grieve. For God's sakes, we all grieve in different ways for whatever happens in your life. Lord knows I've had some bathroom moments that I would let no one see me. Lacey tells the story about how you're laying on the couch and you just want to be there for the day. And she tells the story that somebody comes to the front door. I happen to have a front door where you cannot go anywhere. If you are on the couch, you are seen. I mean, I have been caught by Dee Dee in this situation, laying on my couch. Lacey rolls off the couch, and I can envision her crawling away from the door, just try to continue her grief of the day. And the way that she tells it on the podcast is hilarious. And I have to say that there are many funny stories that you guys tell about, how you need to process the day, what you need to do. And this is why you mentioned bring it in a cooler, drop off, make it simple. Don't make it hard for people to think about what they need, because I can only assume you do not know what you need.
You really don't at that time. I mean, the four of us are very different people. I'm a much more private person. I live in a part of town where we don't all connect with our neighbors. It's a little more, it's not that it's not friendly. It's just people don't get in each other's business like you do in certain parts of town.
Right.
And I kind of like it that way. I've always been kind of a private person. And so this, once again, and the podcast, obviously, times 100, blows that all wide open. But what we all say is whether I know Kira's private and Holly, Whitney is more out there because she's an actress as well as a comedian, and she's been a radio show host. And so she was probably the most comfortable, but it's never easy to share your private stuff for the world to consume. But I'm a personal believer. The whole purpose of this podcast was so that we could create community for these young widows, as well as give them hope that they're not going to only survive, they're going to thrive one day, but there will be some things we could offer as support, meaning these are the things we did that worked, these are the things that we didn't. We're not therapists, we're not experts, but if we can make you feel like you've got friends that have been where you're going, then that's all I needed. That's what I really wanted and I didn't get. But it's no one's fault that I didn't get it. It didn't exist.
How did you meet each other? Because who was the first one that reached out to, did any of you already know each other? Or did you just hear, Kara's been in an accident? I mean, I heard about this mom who's in this situation. How did that come together, and who came up with the idea of having a podcast around it?
Well, Kira, Virginia Greenway, who's a friend of mine, I think you guys know her. I know Julie does. That's how I met Julie.
Yeah.
She sent me an email or called me or something and said, can you go and sit with one of Kira's children? And unfortunately, I was out of state. So I sent her an email and told her that I'd love to meet with her if there's anything I could do for her. And I gave some suggestions. And I didn't hear back from her, for a little bit. But after that, she reached out, we met up, and then Tina Hambley, who I worked with at Vignette, reached out to me for Holly. And I met with Holly. It was pretty soon after her husband died. And I kind of walked her through some of the things that like the business of widowhood, which is Social Security and making sure your name's on the mortgage and things like that. That's how we became friends. And then Whitney, I think, met Holly through because their boys were friends. Mm-hmm. And then the idea of the podcast, I think we'd known each other about a year as a total group, but I had known Kira for a pretty long time by this time. We were having cocktails, and of course, we're thinking, yes, we'll do a podcast. Whitney brings it up and says, how about us doing a podcast? And we laughed. Kira was like, sure, we'll just drink wine and talk into a microphone. Well, that's not exactly how it turns out.
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot more work and energy into it than we realized. And I don't think we even realized how expansive this would become. It's reached over now 50 states. And so it's been helpful because we can help people without having to go and meet with them individually, because we are single parents and most of us work. And so it's
still private if you want to listen and learn something and maybe take a little piece from everything, that you get to laugh again. And, this is exactly why you guys do Trauma Meets Humor.
Yeah. And you can see the impact of what you do just by the comments, even on Apple and iTunes, because people can give you a rating and they can comment. And you have 95 comments, and they're all people like, thank goodness these women are here. You're helping
We're so grateful when they do that, because that's the only feedback we get. Yeah. And then we get the real rubber meets the road is the DMs that we get. And I've had a recent meeting with 2 young widows where I met with them for a glass of wine, and they both super smart women. And one of them's a Stanford educated lawyer. And I was just like, she said, if I had not listened to the business of widowhood, I would not have known that we got Social Security for our children and for ourselves. And I thought, where are the people that are attorneys that are meeting with these widows for their wills and trusts and all that? Why are they not educating these women on those types of things? That's so important, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom. Imagine that your husband dies and he's the sole breadwinner. You don't know, and some don't have life insurance, some do. Yeah. That Social Security can bridge the gap until they get those other, things in order.
Well, and
so
who
it's a real way to measure what we've been able to accomplish, which that's the best part for me. It breaks my heart to see these women to be scared about their finances at a time when they should just, be able to focus on themselves.
And one of you, and I can't recall which one, had to present the death certificate at Costco to get the money because her deceased husband was also on the account or something. But so you have to know also to carry that death certificate, I guess, everywhere you go, because there's things like that you don't even think of.
Now, that was Kira, and that's been a whole saga for several other episodes. But you're right. Yeah. I didn't know. I think Whitney had a travel story where she was coming from another country and she had to have the death certificate. I never thought about it for that, but my son's college, he went to study in London this past semester, and I did have to present that because they're wondering, where's his father? He's got a German passport. You're an American. Who is his father? Yeah. And just so they don't think that I'm trying to, take him across the pond. Exactly. So it's kind of weird. Those are the weird things that you learn about this kind of situation.
You never know. But you also are you're also looking forward thinking. So you ladies also talk about dating.
Yes.
And your most recent episode, which we listened to the other day, was
all about sex.
About sex, which was quite interesting, especially the part where everyone's supposed to be tested and present. I mean, Monica and I to each other
howled in our hotel room, wow, here's your clean card, here's my clean card, let's get naked. I literally was falling on the floor laughing. Whitney made me laugh.
But that's all part of, you move forward. In fact, one of the moms, I guess, is getting married now, from what I understand.
Yes, Kira Lyman is getting married. She got engaged recently. They've been together 4 years. And keep in mind, Frank, her husband, died over almost 10 years.
Almost 10
She's
years.
coming up on her 10-year anniversary. So it's been like a long time, like for me, 12 and a half years, and the other two girls, 7 years. So we've all had time to get through those early years that are just extremely difficult. I waited 3 years to date. Holly waited 5 years, and the other two, I'm not exactly what the timeline was, but we all waited a concerted amount of time, did our therapy, and then, but dating is very interesting as a widow because people assume you're divorced.
That's right.
Which, nothing wrong with that. But when I said to one recently, I said, I'm not divorced. He said, when did you get divorced? And I said, well, I'm not divorced. Then he was like, wait a minute, you're on this app without being divorced.
Yeah, you're like, we're into dating married men.
I'm a
All right,
widow.
yeah,
No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, exactly. Right. That's funny.
When you start dating, or when you even contemplate remarriage and you have kids, they have family from, their grandparents on the other side. I mean, how supportive are the other family members of you moving on with your life as far as possible remarriage or meeting other people? Are they supportive generally, or is that the difficult part of another element of this that's difficult?
Well, for me, my husband's mother died when he was 10 and his sister was 6. So I actually got a lesson on what it looks like to not have, they didn't have a mother. My husband didn't have a mother and his sister didn't have a mother. And then his dad died in the last couple of years. So his sister would be perfectly happy for me moving on. I did date someone at one time and we got engaged, but it just wasn't right for me, and it wasn't right for my son. So I decided not to do that and still date. But it took me a really long time to get to the place where I was ready to date, because it's hard to raise a kid that's as young as mine was on your own. And I went back to work. I worked for myself from home, but it was challenging to say the least. And then driving them, all the things that you guys do as moms, whether you're single, divorced, widowed, whatever, it is so much work. And I felt like for me, if my kid was in a really good place, then I could feel like I could focus on myself. And when he went to college this past year, that's when I started making somewhat of an effort for dating.
I love it.
Wow.
I do have to mention this because it's important. I know we have Zoomer moms, but when I met Lacey a couple months ago, again, I was like, let's go out. And we did. And she's pretty good at impromptu. So we met a favorite place in Austin. And I asked her about, do you get any signs? Do you have signs, from your husband that is deceased? And is Oliver popping up? And so this story that you told, because I think that some people want to know. I personally have been to a medium and she only knew things that I knew. And so that's when I was kind of like, okay, looking at this. So when your son had his tonsils out, this story really struck a chord with me because I'm a big believer in the way that she spoke about. It is episode 7, and it's about signs from the deceased. And I'm going to let you take it from here, but I also believe that she knew exactly what was happening. You want to tell it, Lacey, real quick?
Yes, it was so strange. It wasn't but a couple of months after my husband died that my son, he had strep throat when my husband had strep throat. So imagine my panic that my husband died of group A strep toxic shock, and my son, I go immediately to the doctor, get the doctor to work with him and make sure that he's okay. He's on an antibiotic, but the ENT that I took him to see said those tonsils have to come out sooner than later. They're huge. They're unhealthy. And so I immediately met with 2 separate doctors, and this lovely man, I go to surgery day. My mom comes into town. My sister comes into town, thankfully, because I'm terrified. Mm-hmm. Anything the doctors now, because he was misdiagnosed and then he died the next day, I'm panicked. I still have moments where I'm afraid of doctors. So I go into the hospital and my son is getting ready in his cap and gown and all that kind of stuff. And the nurse comes up to me and she has this heavy German accent. And I was like, wait a minute. I said, are you from Germany? And she said, yes. And it was more like, yeah, like in Germany, that's yes. And I told her a little bit of my German. I spoke to her a little bit in German. And I said, well, what is your name? And she said, my Name is Dagmar. And that was Oliver's mother's name.
Yeah.
Getting chills talking about it.
It made me cry. Yeah.
So I felt like she was there with him. She's in heaven, and I thought she's overlooking this whole thing. I'm terrified, but it immediately calmed me down, and it was just, I wasn't worried anymore. And so he had the tonsils out, and now he's healthy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that. Nice way to end on that.
Exactly.
So.
Well,
and thanks for giving me a little tears up.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
We have some Zoomer moms here who also have some questions. So welcome, Zoomer moms. Welcome to the Moms Club. So we're going to go around and introduce each one, and you can ask a question of Lacey. So Faye, tell us a little bit about yourself, and you have a question for Lacey.
Oh, hi. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Lacey. Really love your stories, especially the last one. I'm a mom too. I'm just wondering, as your life goes forward and one day you'll be married and associate girlfriends, is the identity of being a widow will be staying in the way, or the future podcast will change because your marriage status will change?
I don't know. That's a good question, because the only one of us that is engaged is Kira. Mm-hmm. But, I think that your heart expands. So I don't think I personally don't love labels like anything, whether it's divorce, widow, single, whatever. I'm just a person, and my husband is deceased, but I my heart is open to love. So I don't think of myself. It's just those apps you have to say whether you're a widow or single or divorced or whatever. But, it doesn't really come into play in any other way, except for Whitney gets upset when there's not the box that you check at the doctor's office. Yeah. There's often no widow's box, especially if it's for people below a certain age. So we get upset about that. But as far as the podcast goes, our attorney, Laura Hausman, set us up with our LLC as well as our nonprofit designation. So we hope to do events. There's just so many things that we have ideas for that may not even be as much about us as it would be about helping other people. And that's kind of where we feel like we're headed, is that it's less about our stories and more about how we can educate other widows and maybe help other single women or even married women to be prepared in the event of someone's death. So that's kind of how we see it going forward, because we don't see ourselves as victims, or we see ourselves as empowered women, and we want to empower other women so that they feel like they're prepared in the event this tragedy occurs.
Yeah. That's great. Elizabeth, welcome to the Moms Club. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and do you have a question for Lacey?
Oh, I really enjoyed this. Thank you for being so candid and putting yourself out there. I'm actually friends with one of the moms in this too, and also Laura Hausman. And I just am just in awe of what y'all are doing. Actually, you answered one of my questions just 5 seconds ago when I was going to ask, have you considered doing a podcast show preparing moms that are married, even just to know what it would be like if this was to happen, and they don't have to be, their husband doesn't have to be going through cancer or whatever, life illness, but because it could happen to anyone at any time, and just be prepared. But you answered that, and so I'm glad y'all are doing that. So my other question was, your motto, "Our journey of new beginnings will always honor and rejoice in the past," is incredibly inspiring. Can you share with us how this motto guides your daily life and decision making?
I can. My friend Kathy Steen, who was my roommate in Los Angeles for 5 of the 10 years that I lived here, she wrote this. I'm really big into butterflies. I always feel like there's lightness and beauty in that. Yeah. And on a butterfly card, she wrote that to me. I don't know where she made it up. She got it, whatever. She's known me for so long, and she's been a really close friend for so long. When she sent that to me, I really thought about that and thought for, from early on to even now, we always talk about Oliver. He will always be his dad. Mm-hmm. He will always be my husband. We can say late husband, whatever. He will always be. He was my best friend too. It wasn't just the romantic side of it. He was my best friend. So he will always be an important part of our lives. And we've decided that we wanted to build a life. Ryder, too, we talk about, especially now that he's 19, he was only 6. And in all fairness, if you listen to that episode about the kids, he does not remember his father very well. He was only 6. But he does remember the things that they did. And I thought it was important, since I figured at the young age of 6, and kind of like Kira's daughter that was 4, we try to build in memories for them so that they know who he was. And for me, I don't want my son to think his dad was perfect, because he was not. I don't want him to feel like he has to live up to a ghost, because he doesn't. He gets to be his own person. He hears a lot of the time that he's a lot like his dad, because they're both comp sci. They both love to run, and they do have a similar way in the world. But my son is also uniquely himself. He has his own unique qualities, and I'm just so grateful to my husband that I get to be his mom, because without him, I wouldn't have had him. So I try to just include him in the rest of my life, and hopefully whoever, if I ever marry again or date someone significantly or insignificantly, that they'll just appreciate that I was married to someone who was amazing, and respect that. And I would think they would, because I know for me, I would want to know that whoever they chose was someone amazing.
Yeah.
So
That is great.
Beautifully put.
Debbie, welcome to the Moms Club. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and do you have a question for Lacey?
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and such an honor. And Lacey, I just love that you are extending this community far and wide through your podcast, because I imagine it's a very, very lonely place. And by using this platform, you're able to connect with people who don't really have that ability to reach out, wherever they are. So I love that you're doing this. And I mean, there's so much wit and wisdom, and People Are Gross was amazing. And I was thinking about this and how we reinvent ourselves, throughout life. You graduate from high school, you get a job, you become a wife, you get, you have children. So we're always reinventing ourselves. A lot of times it's expected. Sometimes it's very unexpected. And so you had to go through a major reinvention, but you are now in the process of reinventing once again with your son being in college. And you touched on going out on more dates now, but what else are you doing now that you're entering this phase of life? And do you have a bucket list? What kind of fun things are you doing? And what are you going to do to make the summer special with Ryder being home?
Oh,
boy, those are great questions. And it's funny, because I was talking to Dee Dee before the show. I knew Dee Dee a long time ago, and I have such great respect for her and what she's done as a mother.
yeah.
I don't think I was prepared to be an empty nester. I think partially, too, it may have something to do with being a widow and there's no one else breathing in the house. Maybe I need to get an animal. I don't know.
I can make that happen. I have plenty.
What did you say, Julie?
I can make it happen. I have tons.
Well, I want you to come over more is what I want. I want you to bring wine with you and us hang out and enjoy our life more. And it took a minute. My son goes to school in Boston, and in the second semester he went to London, and that one was the tougher one for me. I don't know, something about being across the pond, even though we have family in Germany and we have family in the UK. My niece is in the UK. It was really hard. And even though I'm busy, I have a VRBO that I own and manage, and I have I'm a story editor, so I do that. Been doing that for 5 years. And then the podcast takes up a lot more time than I think any of us realized. So, and we want it to be great, and getting people on the show takes a lot of time, and then all of the content that we provide on Instagram. So a lot of it is that. And then you build in time for your friendships, which are super important to me. And dating hasn't probably been a high priority, partly because it feels like work a little bit. And I can be a little averse to work outside of my job. So I've been traveling a little bit. Went to Cabo recently for a friend's 50th birthday. Virginia, my friend that I mentioned earlier, did that. That was super fun. And went to London with my son and got to see, this is a funny story. I met a guy before I ever met my husband in Galway, Ireland. And we stayed friends for a little while and then dated, short stint. He helped me move to Austin, Texas. And then I met Oliver. And then, of course, he went back to England, and I didn't see him until I dropped my son off in college. He lives in Bristol. Oh. So he came over for the day and spent time with me. It was so much fun seeing someone I hadn't seen in 20-something years. Mm-hmm. And then my son met him, and that was kind of funny to him because he knows me as a single person.
Oh, yeah.
And so he was like, who is this guy?
I bet.
That was kind of fun.
Dee Dee, welcome to the Moms Club. Do you tell us a bit about yourself, and do you have a question for Lacey?
Sure. Hi there. Well, I have been in Austin for a long time, and I know a lot of us have been. So, we've had influx of folks over the last few years moving in. So most of us have seen the transition. And so, Lacey, I kind of with that, I loved your butterfly analogy and the story of that as well, because I think, and piggybacking on what Debbie said, I feel like we as women, through the different phases of life, constantly have to, turn from the caterpillar into the butterfly and go through different, phases. And so what made me think about the consistent thing that you have brought in every story that you've been telling is the sense of connection with other women and the sense of community. And in every single part of what you've talked about, whether it's your podcast or, just the different pieces, the importance of the fact that you not only have maintained different connections throughout life, but now you guys are going out into the world to provide the same connection for women who may or may not have the access when they've got small children and they become suddenly widows. They don't have the time to maintain those connections and feel like they can still have the support. So, you mentioned that there were some other things other than the podcast that you're planning on doing. Yeah. Can you tell us just a little bit more about what are some of the other evolutions that have branched out from the podcast that y'all are planning to help women and empower women in our journeys in life?
Yes, you're absolutely right. That's really important for all four of us. We all have our own girlfriends outside of that. It's always been important to me to have women friends. Even though I had a husband, he always knew I was a better wife if I had my women friends. He was an introvert. I'm an ambivert. I'm in the middle. So I have to go out with my women friends, and it makes me a better person. And I hang out with a lot of really dynamic women, you being one of them. I know all of you Austin women are incredible. I'm very lucky to live here because there's some amazing, smart, capable women some who stay home with their children, some who work outside the home. Doesn't matter. Being a mom is tough. And we need each other. This is why I love this podcast, because it's supportive of moms and not belittling what they're doing. Maybe it's not how you would do it, but we support moms. I mean, like all four of us did different things as well. But so what we're trying to do in building community is what we would like to do. We're hoping that, because right now this is bootstrapped. We not only record ATX, Whitney is our editor, so she does not get paid.
Oh, wow.
We have been paying for this on our own, but like I've said, we're all, single women trying to pay for our children. I'm paying for college for my son now. So, we're all in that throes of life, whether you're married or not. It's expensive to put kids through college. So what we're going to try to do is use our nonprofit arm that we just got the designation. Yes. I mean, it's probably been a week and a half, maybe. Laura was so amazing getting that going. And that usually takes a lot longer than it took her. I don't know what magic she put on that designation. But so what we're hoping is that when we get those donations, we can use that money and create events where we can invite these
Yes.
widows from whether it's around the state of Texas, Austin, we don't know yet. We're still in those development stages, but we want to give them a place where they can build community because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They just want to know that someone sees them, hears them. And then, we did a jewelry event at Wendy Wells Jewelry recently. She was so amazing. She gave us a percentage of the profits of the money that we made that night. And we use that money to help us do this podcast because it does cost us money. And,
Lacey, we love that you do events in Austin. I'll be a big supporter and come to it. But
absolutely, and we love your podcast, and we encourage everyone out there to listen to Every Widow Thing.
Yes,
whether you're a widow or not. It's
yes.
helpful to everybody. And where can we find you on social media?
You can find us on Instagram at Every Widow Thing. You can find us on YouTube, the same name. You can find us on Facebook, Every Widow Thing. And we would just love for you to like us, follow us. And our podcast is Every Widow Thing, wherever you listen to your podcast.
And you can donate. Great. I mean, it's an important cause.
Well, check it out. Yes, it absolutely is. And you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok,
all of
YouTube,
the above.
At Inside the Moms Club. We have a website, InsideTheMomsClub.com. I cannot believe this time it always goes by so fast.
Yes.
But we will be back next time with moms just like you and extraordinary guests. And remember our motto, ladies. This is extremely important. If you don't laugh sometimes,
you are going to cry.
You're going to cry. So don't cry, laugh, and enjoy it, and be positive. And we'll see you